Well, here we are in hour number 4. Webster Tarpley is our guest. I want to get into the incredible announcements by the Chinese leader ahead of his state visit, signaling the end of the dollar, saying it's got to not be the world reserve currency, and saying he wants the Chinese currency to be that. Of course, a few months ago, Russia and China did start signaling that they were going to engage in trade amongst themselves in a new currency. Now they've chosen the Chinese currency for that. They're now selling it on the world market. So we're going to talk about that with Webster. But right now, Tunisia forces fight presidential guards near palace. They've had 3 presidents in the last 48 hours there. They say WikiLeaks information on greed of Tunisian president's wife that drove a nation onto the streets to start a revolution. You've got a article here today, Tunisian WikiLeaks putsch. CIA touts Mediterranean tsunami of coups that are going to be coming. And here's another one. AP, U.S. denies WikiLeaks spurred revolt in Tunisia. Webster Tarpley.
Well, this is a destabilization, right? It's a coup, and the general word that you're hearing from the State Department and the CIA here in Washington is that this is now a second generation or a new generation of the CIA people power coup, color revolution, or postmodern coup. And it's now the ingredients being the youth bulge, the fact that such a large portion of the population in the Arab world is under 30, under 25 even, the vulnerability of these people to Western social media, Facebook, Twitter, Google.
Yeah, they want to get them socialized so they can inject them with the sterilants and things so they can be trendy and have abortions when they're 10.
They think that Twitter and Facebook are cool. They think the U.S. is cool. But on the other hand, this is now the post-9/11 generation, so-called, according to the think tanks, of people who don't like the existing regimes, but they don't like the Islamist sort of ultra-Puritan opposition. So you've got that. And then the big thing to say is that this is not the Jasmine Revolution. This is a hunger revolution. This is about what Wall Street has done to the world economy, that you have very high levels of unemployment, and especially now with a wave of speculation with derivatives in the markets. You've got the fuel price, the price for gas, for cooking, for gasoline, for heating oil, whatever else they need. That's gone sky high, and the basic food groups. Now, we're having a tremendous upward spike in the world food prices that are going on right now. So you take that economic despair. This is where the Tunisian events are really rooted. It started with a guy with a vegetable cart in Sidi Bouzid in Tunisia, and along come the police. They harass him. He doesn't have a permit to have his push cart with vegetables, and he's in such despair that he burns himself. It sounds like an Italian neo-realist movie of 1945 or something like this, right, where the guy is basically driven to the last extremity. So now the attempt then is that you've got to get the petty bourgeoisie, the middle class, goes into the streets, and they, of course, are not so concerned about the economic issues. They're concerned more about voting or blogging or free speech. And with this, the CIA thinks that they can refurbish the model of the color revolution and the people power coup. You notice that the so-called Twitter revolution in Iran in June of 2009 was a failure. It just plotzed. It didn't go anywhere, right, with Mousavi. The Orange Revolution in Ukraine has now been completely rolled back. The NATO IMF agents Yushchenko and Timoshenko have been kicked out. The Cedars Revolution in Lebanon did not work. That's an interesting one because they were stopped by Hezbollah, which happens to be a well-organized force.
Stay there. Let's look at this geopolitically and why the Brzezinski school is pushing for all of this soft power overthrow. And then the other question is, what type of governments are they wanting to put in? Why are they doing this? What's the motive? Let's look at the globe and what you see coming up in the next year. Then I want to get into dollar devaluation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are live now into the 4th hour. Webster Tarpley is our guest, and we're covering the Tunisian situation, which Tarpley has written a detailed article available at Infowars.com. saying that it's a CIA Mediterranean tsunami of coups. And we do see some media bragging about this while still also denying to the general public, kind of like we knew back in September that Israel and the U.S. had made the Stuxnet worm to be used on Iran. Now on Saturday they bragged in the New York Times that indeed Israel tested it and developed it with the U.S. at the Dimona facility in Israel. Now confirmed Stuxnet was false flag launched by Israel and U.S. By false flag, they're touting it as a reason to take over internet freedom because someone created Stuxnet. They created it. So amazing. So geopolitically, undoubtedly, they are manipulating and using the Twitter-type system, which we know is State Department-backed, which runs the CIA, to do this. But why do they not want who is in power in Tunisia? A lot of times they like Arab dictators. They like corrupt, oppressive states. I guess Tunisia wasn't playing ball properly with them. And what's the goal with all these synthetic people power situations going on?
I think the goal is to use Tunisia as a kind of pilot project and get a wave going. And what they're looking at, for example, is Ben Ali in Tunisia had been in power for 23 years. That's nothing. Mubarak in Egypt has been in power for 30 years. The Assad dynasty in Syria has been in power for 30 years. And Gaddafi in Libya has been in power for about 40 years or more. Now, all of these countries are targeted. The gloating from the CIA is that we can use WikiLeaks, we can put out stories about Mubarak and Gaddafi, the Hashemite monarchy in Jordan, another target. We can bring them down because we've got the economic unrest because of the food prices, the fuel prices, the unemployment, the despair. And then we can come in, we get the workers going with that, and we can get the petty bourgeoisie going with our WikiLeaks.
And then what do they do down the road?
Well, here's the idea. The goal of the U.S. in the Middle East is to assemble a coalition of Arab and Sunni states and play that against Iran, the Shiites, and the allies of Iran, whatever they may be. So the approach, and this is the specific Obama-Brzezinski approach. This is no longer the neocons. The neocons would say, bomb everybody to kingdom come. Well, you can't do that anymore. You're too weak. So now you've got to try to assemble this coalition. And you can see one of the key parts is the Israelis are putting out calls to the Arabs saying, you've got to join us against Iran, because they want to get Israel into that group too. The point is that when you've got regimes like Ben Ali after 23 years, now Tunisia is not the key militarily, but it's a very interesting country. Egypt, Syria, Libya, they all have, again, these sort of entrenched, sclerotic, really conservative governments that are not interested in wars. They're interested in the status quo. If anything, they want the U.S. to fight the war, right? They'd rather have the neocon approach. So the idea is to try to overthrow these people, and instead of getting an entrenched, immobile regime, you get some unstable demagogue who's going to be much easier to get going into some kind of regional war against Iran. You also want to play them against China and Russia. A couple of examples, right? We know that in the Iranian color revolution of the summer of 2009, this Mousavi, if he had taken power, he was going to cut off all oil deliveries to China. That would be a great thing. The U.S. would be delighted to have this. In, for example, Syria, if you had a color revolution in Syria, assisted by WikiLeaks and the economic situation, the Russians have this naval base in Tartus, Syria, and the NATO planners are very worried about what this means for the Mediterranean. If you overthrew the Assad dynasty in Syria, the very least you could hope to get would be kicking the Russians out of Syria. So again, play the Arabs against Iran, China, Russia, and that's the key to the entire thing. Notice also Sudan being carved in two because the Chinese are getting oil from the wells in southern Sudan. So at this point, the U.S. and the British put on the big push to have Sudan carved into two parts in the same way that Iraq is essentially carved into three parts. This is the Bernard Lewis plan. Sort of brought up to date. So it's a general assault on the Arab countries. Now, behind all this, as you're saying, the weakness of the dollar. Concerning the dollar, I would say we have a dangerous situation in the sense that the dollar is slowly losing its ability to function as the world reserve currency but there is no alternative.
All right, let me stop you there because I want to segue into that by documenting this for radio listeners and PrisonPlanet.tv viewers. As you know, on Sunday morning yesterday, Hu Jintao called for a currency system, the current currency system, a product of the past. He went on to say that the dollar cannot be the world reserve currency anymore and called for the Chinese currency to replace it ahead of a state visit that starts on Wednesday. Here's another headline. Hu highlights need for U.S.-China cooperation, questions the dollar. He went on to say that we would all stand to gain from a sound China-U.S. relationship and lose from confrontation. And that continues there. Here's the Financial Times of London. Who questions future role of U.S. dollar? This on the heels in the last month or so of China and Russia starting to engage in trade using Chinese currency. And then you've got Wayne Madsen and others saying that that was a Chinese missile test off the coast. By the way, what's your view on that, Webster?
There are two competing stories. One is that the U.S. trying to scare China. There's another story. It's China trying to scare the U.S. I don't know. It just shows that the tensions are rising. But look,
and now they're sending in more Chinese troops into North Korea. This is the first time in 16 years.
Right. On this reserve currency issue, though, you have to understand, what does it take to be a reserve currency, and who has this wherewithal? Right now, it's the U.S. and nobody else. If you want to be a reserve currency, that means that world central banks keep their reserves in your currency. And therefore, you've got to have something like the U.S. Treasury bill, Treasury bond market, which is very broad and very deep and very liquid, with a turnover of about $1 trillion, $1 trillion U.S. dollars a day go in and out, much, much more than the stock market and the other things that the people look at. And if you want to have a reserve currency, you've got to be able to say, I've got a treasury market that is so well developed on the U.S. model that you can put in basically any amount of securities and get cash back